we are just waiting for a technical. Dr. Farouk is solving something technical, and then we shall be on our way. Okay, thank you, Prof. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, students, and would also like to welcome those who are online. I would like to welcome you to this afternoon's PhD defense, and I want to begin by presenting to you our candidate, Mr. Boniface Ayebare. Would like to congratulate you for reaching this far, and Mr. Boniface Ayebare will be talking to us about his doctoral project. You can sit down. About his doctoral project entitled Project-Based Learning in Teaching French in Uganda, the Case of French for Specific Purposes at Kabale University. I don't see the French version of that title, but I know it will be coming later on, but I would have also wanted to read the French title at this moment. So, Bonnie, you are welcome. Would also like to introduce to you the supervisors, Associate Professor Natukunda-Togboa, Edith, and the co-supervisor is Dr. Enoch Sebuyungo. And Dr. Enoch Sebuyungo doubles as the head of department where Mr. Ayebare Boniface has been doing his PhD. That is the Department of European and Oriental Languages. Both of them, incidentally, are my teachers. Professor Natukunda taught me somewhere in Chambogo, and then when I came here, I found her here. She taught me alongside Dr. Sebuyungo. So we are glad that you mentored us, and we are here also mentoring us. I would also like to introduce to you the critical discussant, Associate Professor Milburga Achelo. Milburga is our colleague. She is the Dean. She's the Dean Faculty of Tourism, Hospitality, and Languages at MOBS, that is Makerere University Business School. I was wondering, it is a business school, but then there is a faculty, so which is bigger? We shall talk about those ones later on. And then the other members of the panel, we have Dr. Ibrahim Saleh, my colleague in the Department of European and Oriental Languages. We have got Dr. Agat, we shall call her ATM, and she's also from the Department of European and Oriental Languages. You're welcome. And we have got Dr. Samuel Wandela. Samuel Wandela has been part of us, but he decided to run away to Chambogo University, but we still encroach on him to be part of us. Dr. Samuel Wandela, you are welcome. So thank you for bringing this candidate to this stage. As you are aware, Mr. Ayebare, you have completed the rest of the stages, but this is also another stage. It's an examination. You can pass or you can fail, but we hope you know you are going to pass. Colleagues who are here, you are also welcome, and those who are online, if there is any dean online, you are welcome. I hope our dean is also online. Prof, you are welcome. And I would also like to introduce the relatives of Mr. Ayebare. We have got the sister in the house, Faith. You can stand up for recognition. And then we also have got friends of Ayebare. I think these are your alumni who are in the house. You are welcome. And the other members. So as you are aware, we are going to start this defense. And we shall start with the presentation by the candidate. And we are going to give you 30 minutes. We know this work has been conducted in French, but since this is a public defense, the defense has got to be in English. But we shall also request you to take 10 minutes to provide the French version of what you have done. So you have got 20 minutes to present us in English, and then 10 minutes to present us in French. And thereafter, we shall be calling upon the critical discussant to engage with you for 1 hour. And after that, we shall call upon the panelists who are going to engage the candidate, and then the rest of us, the public, will engage the candidate at the end. We are also privileged to have Associate Professor Maureen Ayukoro from the Royal Holloway, University of London. Thank you for gracing this occasion. Okay. So without further ado, let me now invite Mr. Ayebare Boniface to present to us what he has been cooking all these last 3+ years. You're welcome. You have 30 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for coming to listen to my PhD defense. My name is Boniface Ayebare, and the title of my study is Project-Based Learning in Teaching French in Uganda, the case of French for specific purposes at Kabale University. Later, I will present the findings and the title in French. This is the summary of my background, of my presentation. I start from the introduction and background up to the conclusions. I go straight to the introduction background, and I want to start by defining what project-based learning is. It is a teaching method in which learners construct their knowledge by actively participating in the learning process through activities and projects that address their specific needs. That definition is drawn from Dewey 2018. And project-based learning must result into a product, a concrete product that addresses societal needs. Those are key concepts in project-based learning. What is the background to this study? Uganda has over 40 indigenous languages. English is the official language. Kiswahili is the second official language. What is the status of French? French is categorized as a foreign language, and it is bundled among several other foreign languages. Now, on 30th of November 2024, French was officially adopted as a third language of the East African community. And this is after French, after English and Kiswahili. And then the context of Kabale University, where I conducted this research, it is located in southwestern Uganda, close to Francophone countries such as DRC, Burundi, Central African Republic, and Rwanda, which is partly Francophone. Background to the language and French language teaching. It began around the 1950s, but was officially adopted in 1963. Now, in 2020, Uganda adopted a new secondary school curriculum, and this puts French in a block of other optional subjects. And in this specific curriculum, it is very well stated that priority must be given to research and projects. So they advocate for change in the approach of teaching. What is the problem in my research, and this is the statement of my problem. Now, we have the new competence-based curriculum, which has been introduced in 2020, and it emphasizes secondary schools. These learners in 2 years, 2027, will be entering universities. But these universities have not been prepared for project-based learning, for competence-based learning. So what will happen? There is a very high risk that there is going to be a mismatch in the teaching methods, because these learners have been brought up in the competence-based methods and approaches, but when they arrive at the university, they are going to be faced with instructors who are not used to this approach. So this requires a shift in the teaching methods and approaches at university, and this study is intended to achieve that. What were the objectives of the study? The general objective was to investigate how teaching of French for specific purposes, which I'll be calling FOSS, at Kabale University can be improved by shifting from a theoretical to a practical teaching method. And I had 4 specific objectives. One was to make a situational analysis and needs assessment of the teaching of FOSS at Kabale University. 2 was to identify and document the procedures of implementing learning projects at Kabale University. The 3rd was to examine the strategies and best practices of implementing learning projects. And the 4th was to analyze the impact of learner involvement in implementing learning projects. What was the scope of my study? It was conducted at Kabale University in southwestern Uganda. The time scope data was collected between February and April 2023, and it focused on 2 groups of beginners, year 1, and one was French for tourism, and the other one was French for beginners. French for tourism and French for engineering. What is the justification? On 9th of July 2025, just a few weeks ago, the Minister of Education and Sports wrote to universities in Uganda through the chair of the National Council for Higher Education, Professor Joy Kwesi, and instructed them to ensure that universities adopt the competence-based approaches in teaching. But this was already introduced in 2020. So as it was introduced, I found it important to ensure that I put in place a project that prepares these universities to prepare for this approach. And it is good that even when there was no formal instruction, formal guideline to the universities, it has now come out. It came out, of course, when my study was already ongoing. In fact, when I had already written this thesis. The study was based on 3 main theories. One was the constructivist theory of Jean Piaget, which emphasizes the development of knowledge by children. And its main tenet that learners construct their own knowledge through experience and interaction with their environment. Piaget takes this learning process as an individual process where learners or children are not born empty-handed or empty-headed. They are not empty teens, but they already have some knowledge that is developed over time as they grow. The second theory is by Lev Vygotsky, the social constructivism theory, and this adds the social process to the constructivist theory of Jean Piaget. And this Vygotsky emphasizes that learners develop knowledge better by interacting with their environment, mainly more advanced peers or even teachers. There are two key concepts in the theory of Lev Vygotsky. That's the zone of proximal development and scaffolding. And this is where learners can be able to perform tasks which are beyond their current abilities through scaffolding, which is some kind of temporary support that is given by peers and teachers. The third theory is the experiential learning by Lev Vygotsky, and this emphasizes learning as an active and continuous process that is deeply rooted in experience. I present to you a summary of my literature. There is literature on teaching approaches and methods by Ryan and Dechi, 2000, which emphasizes that those approaches that encourage autonomy and active participation of learners are likely to trigger intrinsic motivation. We have other scholars from Africa who looked at project-based learning but critiqued PBL as not being adaptable to African contexts. And this is where my study now comes in, to ensure that we design a model that is suited and contextualized to Africa. We have another renowned author, Achero, 2017, who has done extensive research in French for specific purposes, and she emphasizes the relevance of French in the tourism sector. There is some literature about challenges of PBL. One is heavy workload by the teacher. The other one is the different language competencies and cognitive abilities of the learners. And the other one is the assessment of these projects. Because as you assess PBL, you don't assess only the language component, you must also assess the project. My methodology, this study was grounded in the interpretivism theory, which suggests that reality is subjective and socially constructed. I used the qualitative approach, which is the most ideal for analyzing, understanding people's lived experiences. I used a case study research design, which mainly looks at a single or few cases in detail. The study population study area and population, my area was Kabale University in southwestern Uganda, and the population was mainly composed of students of French for specific purposes. The participants, we had two groups. One main group, which was composed of two groups of beginners, that was first year beginners in tourism and engineering. We also had a comparative group, which you can call a control group, which was composed of second years in the same fields. This is a summary of those groups, but we also have another category of participants, lecturers of French at Kabale University. They are 5 in number. University administrators 4, tourism professionals, they were 3, engineering professionals were 2, totaling to 14. What method did we use to select these participants? We mainly used purposive sampling, in which is used to select participants according to the characteristics and their relevance to the intended study. Data collection, we used document review, where we analyzed books, journal articles, reports, dissertations, conference presentation, etc. We also used video recordings, and this is recommended because it helps to capture both the verbal and non-verbal expressions. We used both participants observation and non-participants. Participant observation for the main group and non-participants for the control group. We also used in-depth interviews to interact with those groups that I mentioned. We also formed focus group discussions, 5 in number, to be specific. And finally, we used the logbooks. Logbooks is a method that is recommended by Van 2017, where the students and the researcher would record experiences on a daily basis of what was transpiring. Data analysis, we used 3 complementary approaches to analyze our data. We used thematic analysis, textual analysis, and discourse analysis. ethical considerations, institutional approval. We had to get a letter, introduction letter from Makerere University, Department of European and Oriental Languages, which was sent to Kabale University where the research was conducted. After Kabale University clearing us, we proceeded to Kabrek, the Research Ethics Committee, and then UNCAST. We also had to consider aspects like informed consent of participants and confidentiality and protection against prejudices. Now I go to the findings of the study. The findings are of course arranged according to the objectives, where the first objective was to make a situational analysis and needs assessment of the learning and teaching of French. Now, in the situational analysis of the teaching of French, we did three things. We analyzed the curricula and teaching documents. We interacted with teachers, students, administrators, and these professionals on their to get their perceptions about the teaching and learning of French. We also did a SWOT analysis to understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What did we find? Interesting findings. So when we analyzed the curricula of Kabale University, we found that the course titles were very well designed: French for tourism and French for engineering. But when you go into a detailed analysis, you find that the content is more or less the same. The content for French for tourism and French for engineering is more or less the same. Now, that's what caused that mainly was this content is picked from other foreign books which are not contextualized. So we found there was a gap in this that had to be filled. Now, because of that, because of the content that is not contextualized, you find that students don't link what they learn to their specific context. And this kind of reduces their motivation. And this finding, this particular finding, confirms the observation of Mangiant and Perpet 2011, who emphasized the importance of linking false content to the actual context of the learners. We also did a SWOT analysis. Among the strengths, we found that there is a highly trained and experienced team of teachers at Kabale University. The university's strategic location in a tourist area, then close to the border with Francophone countries. Those are some of the strengths. Among the weaknesses, we found a limited offer of force. In fact, we found only two: tourism and engineering. There was also lack of contextualized teaching resources and lack of language laboratory to facilitate the learning. Among the opportunities, we found a partnership with Francophone institutions, regional professional opportunities, and government funding. And among the threats, we found there was competition with other languages, especially Chinese, but there was also low political support from the government towards the learning of French. So when we went to the needs assessment of the learners, we made an interesting discovery. Students of tourism are more attracted towards spoken French. They prefer to learn more of spoken French. While students of engineering, their focus is on written French. So we take them as students of force, but their needs are actually different. Now this means before you teach force, you need to know your learners, know exactly why they want to learn this language, and ensure that you design a curriculum that addresses their specific needs. When we went to the procedure of implementing learning projects at Kabale University, what is the procedure? What steps do you go through? And here I'm outlining for you the procedures and the processes that we used to implement our projects, and which are also, some of them are recommended by Purin 2000, but customized to our study because we had a real, a concrete experience. So you need to begin with needs analysis, then you go into defining objectives, then you design the project which you want to learn. And in our case, our project was Welcome Kabale. It was French, Bienvenue à Kabale, and this was inspired by those who have learned French. You know, Bienvenue à Kabale. It is a video that is Bienvenue en France. It is a video that is in the learning and teaching of French, and this is what inspired us to come up with a project titled Bienvenue à Kabale, or Welcome to Kabale. Then you do resource mobilization, you go into developing teaching materials, then you go into the actual implementation of the project, then you do monitoring, evaluation, and adjustment, and this is along the project implementation. And finally, it is important to do an evaluation of the project and dissemination. The third objective, which was about strategies of implementing a learning project, we came up with 8 main strategies. 1, the project should be anchored in the in the learner's specific needs. 2, it should be contextualized. There should be contextualization of tasks that are given to the learners. The learners the learning should be done through action. It should be authentic. There should be collaboration and teamwork. There should be integration of digital tools. There should be integrated formative assessments. And then in this project, the autonomy of the learner should also be emphasized. And then the project should be aligned with the learning objectives. So you need to know the learning objectives and ensure that the project is aligned to the learning objectives. We have to be careful when doing some project-based learning because there are some pitfalls that have to be avoided. One is what we can call the productivist drift, which emphasizes too much focus on the final product. Like you go out to do a video and all your attention is put on the video at the detriment of the learning process. Now we are in the digital era. There is also a tendency to emphasize the digital tools, but there is also the spontaneous drift where the learner are left too much autonomy and the teacher is not involved enough. The fourth and last objective was to understand the impacts of involving learners in projects. And this we did while comparing with the second group, the comparative group. And we found that PBL, project-based learning, leads to increased motivation and learner involvement. 2, we found that students acquire both language and soft skills. And these soft skills include timekeeping, collaboration and teamwork, critical thinking and problem solving skills, which are not normally applied or emphasized when you are doing the traditional way of teaching. Other aspects in the impact include the autonomy of the learners, which is enhanced, collaborative skills, self-efficacy, critical thinking and problem solving, flexibility and adaptability to individual needs, preparation for the professional fields, and then transferability of the skills acquired. We found when these learners acquire skills through the projects, they don't stop at the project itself. You find even when they go to other skills, when they go to other aspects of life, like timekeeping, you emphasize timekeeping during the project, and then you find that these learners keep the timekeeping even in other aspects. So, what was the impact, another aspect of the impact was students in the control group showed less progress in the oral communication skills, and their motivation was less apparent compared to the students in the main group. Challenges in project-based learning as we experienced them. Heterogeneity of language levels, where you have learners who have different language levels. Then limited resources, because implementing a project requires a lot of resources. Balancing autonomy and scaffolding, where learners are assisted progress. Then project implementing skills. As a teacher, you must have some project management skills if you are to effectively teach through this method. Then heavy workload, weather hazards such as heavy rains, which we experienced a lot, and a number of cases our projects had to be adjusted. Then assessment of several competencies. When using this method, you must assess language, collaboration, timekeeping, which are not in the traditional methods. Were these 4 objectives achieved? Yes, we achieved all the 4 objectives of our research. We however hoped to move these learners, beginner learners, to at least level B1, which was not achieved. That was a limitation. Implications, recommendations, and conclusions for teachers of French. We recommend that the role changes from changes to being facilitator, and this would have to go through retooling or training. Universities and higher institutions of learning should adopt these learner-centered approaches. The government should have a language policy that favors French for specific purposes, or even French as a whole, and they should also increase funding for projects. The secondary schools should also adopt PBL and learner-centered approaches. What is the contribution to the body of knowledge of these projects? This project came up with a model that can be used to teach using this method of project-based learning. We also have a very short video of a few minutes, which we hope can be used as a contextualized resource. And this work also, we made 3 publications out of this, which is also a contribution to the body of knowledge. For suggestions, we suggest that should extend PBL to other areas of force, such as legal French, medical French. We should also assess the long-term effect of PBL on innovative projects, and we should also analyze the teacher's role in the successful implementation of PBL. Conclusion: the study confirmed that PBL, or project-based learning, develops not only the language skills, but also the soft and pragmatic skills, which are essential for the 21st century workforce. Acknowledgement so much. A lot of thanks to my supervisors, Kabale University administration, colleagues, French department, students, my participants who participated in this study, the App for Family, the MFT family also, and my family and friends. This is a map of Uganda where the study was conducted. There is a short video, but I think we can move to the French for a few minutes.
Oui, je vous invite maintenant de présenter votre travail en français parce que vous n'avez 5 minutes. I'm just inviting him to present his work in French. His time is pretty spent. You have 5 minutes to present the French version.
Bon, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, pour la séance. Je m'appelle Boniface Ayebare et je vous présente les résultats de ma recherche, de ma thèse intitulée « La pédagogie de projet en didactique du français en Ouganda et le camp du français l'université de Kabale. Qu'est-ce que la pédagogie de projet? C'est une méthode d'enseignement qui consiste à apprendre et dans la DOE 2018. Et le processus doit aboutir à la réalisation d'une production concrète d'utilité sociale. Comme j'ai déjà présenté en anglais, vous allez me permettre d'aller directement aux résultats de l'étude. Donc, je ne vais pas présenter. Bon, pour la problématique, je vous rappelle que dans 2 ans, il y a les étudiants qui ont suivi un enseignement par les approches par compétences qui arriveront dans 2 ans à l'université, mais les universités n'ont pas été bien préparées pour ces approches. Donc, cette étude cherche à préparer les étudiants à l'université, mais aussi les enseignants, à traverser, à transformer l'enseignement des approches théoriques vers les approches pratiques. On avait les 4 objectifs comme j'avais déjà présenté en anglais. Le premier objectif consistait à faire une analyse situationnelle et analyse des besoins de l'apprentissage du français à l'université, d'identifier et documenter les processus d'exécution des projets pédagogiques, d'examiner les stratégies d'exécution et analyser l'impact de l'implication des apprenants. J'avais 3 théories: le constructivisme de Jean Piaget, le socio-constructivisme de Lev Vygotsky et l'apprentissage expérientiel par John Dewey. Donc, je passe directement aux résultats. Pour le premier objectif qui consistait à faire une analyse situationnelle et analyse des gens, qu'est-ce qu'on a trouvé à l'université? On a trouvé que les intitulés du FOSS, du français sur l'objectif, sont bien définis. Français du tourisme, français d'ingénierie. Mais quand on fait une analyse approfondie des curriculums, on trouve que le contenu est plutôt général. Donc, le contenu ne correspond pas directement aux objectifs de l'étude. En ce qui concerne l'analyse des besoins des étudiants, on a fait une découverte importante. Les étudiants en tourisme accordent la priorité à la compétence orale, alors que les étudiants en génie accordent leur priorité à la compétence écrite. Ça veut dire quoi exactement? Ça veut dire qu'on doit analyser les besoins des étudiants, même si tous font le FOSS, il faut analyser les besoins avant de se lancer dans l'enseignement. Et puis, on avait le deuxième objectif qui consistait à examiner le processus d'exécution de projets pédagogiques, qui doit commencer par l'identification et l'analyse des besoins, définition des objectifs, conception du projet pédagogique, mobilisation des ressources humaines, matérielles, financières, développement de matériel pédagogique, la mise en œuvre du projet, suivi, évaluation et ajustement, et puis on termine par le bilan et diffusion. Pour le troisième objectif qui consistait à analyser les stratégies de mise en œuvre de projets pédagogiques, on a souligné 8 stratégies. L'encadrage, on doit ancrer les projets dans les besoins des apprenants, contextualisation des tâches, apprentissage par l'action, collaboration et travail d'équipe, intégration des outils numériques, évaluation formative intégrée, autonomie et responsabilisation des apprenants, et puis finalement l'alignement des projets avec les objectifs d'apprentissage. Et puis enfin le quatrième objectif qui consistait à analyser l'impact de l'implication des apprenants dans les projets pédagogiques. Il y a la motivation accrue et engagement des apprenants quand on adopte la pédagogie de projet, l'acquisition de compétences linguistiques et pragmatiques, développement de l'autonomie, renforcement des compétences collaboratives, renforcement de la confiance en soi, développement de la pensée critique et résolution de problèmes, flexibilité et adaptation aux besoins individuels, préparation à des situations professionnelles interculturelles et transférabilité de compétences acquises. Il faut faire attention parce qu'il y a des limites à la pédagogie de projet et on a fait face à ces limites. Notamment, il y a la diversité des niveaux linguistiques des apprenants que le professeur est obligé de prendre en compte, le manque de ressources technologiques, logistiques, mais on doit aussi équilibrer. L'équilibre entre l'autonomie et l'encadrement n'est pas toujours très évident pour l'enseignant. Le manque de compétences en gestion de projet qui est pertinente pour la pédagogie de projet, et puis la charge de travail plus lourde pour l'enseignant, et puis les imprévus climatiques comme des fortes pluies qui nous ont obligés de modifier dans le déroulement du projet, et puis l'évaluation des compétences variées comme des aspects langagiels, la collaboration, gestion de temps. Quelles sont les implications pour les enseignants? Il faut changer, passer vers le rôle de facilitateur. Pour les universités et les institutions d'enseignement supérieur, il faut repenser les structures pédagogiques, adopter des approches centrées sur l'apprenant. Pour le gouvernement, il faut adopter une politique linguistique qui est favorable à la langue française, quand même, comme c'est une langue officielle de la communauté de l'Afrique de l'Est. Mais il faut aussi accorder plus de soutien financier. Pour les écoles secondaires, il faut adopter la pédagogie de projet et les approches centrées sur l'apprenant. Quelle est ma contribution à la connaissance? Je vous propose un modèle qui va vous permettre de poursuivre, d'exécuter des projets, d'enseigner à travers les projets, comme c'est une approche qui est recommandée actuellement par le gouvernement. On a fait une courte vidéo contextualisée que j'estime pourrait contribuer aux ressources pédagogiques contextualisées. Nous avons également 3 publications et on a fait quelques suggestions pour des recherches futures, notamment étant le projet aux autres disciplines de FOSS, évaluer l'efficacité durable du projet, analyser le rôle de l'enseignant dans l'exécution réussie de la pédagogie de projet. En conclusion, cette étude souligne l'efficacité de la pédagogie de projet dans le développement des compétences linguistiques, mais aussi les compétences pragmatiques. Remerciements à tout le monde qui a contribué à ce travail. Maintenant, je ne sais pas si le président de la séance pourrait me permettre de lancer une vidéo de quelques minutes pour vous présenter tout juste un petit peu ce que les étudiants ont réalisé à l'université.
Ça dure combien de temps? Parce que vous avez déjà pris 40 minutes.
Ça dure moins de 4 minutes, hein? C'est très court.
Non, je pense qu'on ne veut pas accepter ça.
La moitié?
Non. Ok, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Et Boniface. So he was pleading for me to allow him to play the video. And maybe I can allow to play it for about 2 minutes because you have already spent more than 30 minutes that we gave you. So let's have the video and then we can move on to the next.
Bonjour à tous, je m'appelle Chirenji Doreen, je suis étudiante à l'université de Kabale. Je veux le tourisme. Bienvenue à Kabale. Merci beaucoup.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Tumsine Steven. Je suis étudiant, je viens d'Ontungamo. J'habite ici à l'université de Kabale. Je suis célibataire et j'adore la musique. J'aime le français et bienvenue à Kabale. Merci beaucoup. À très bientôt.
Je m'appelle Bambale Jokim. Je suis à l'université de Kabale. Que Dieu vous bénisse.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Isaac Okelo. Je viens de Kwania. Je suis étudiant à l'université de Kabale. Je fais tourisme. Merci.
Bonjour Dorine.
Bonjour, ça va?
Ça va bien, merci. Je te présente mon amie. Elle s'appelle Daisy. Elle est étudiante ici à l'université de Kabale. Elle fait le tourisme en première année. Elle vient de Bougondi. Daisy, voici mon amie.
Enchantée, Daisy.
Ah oui, tu es en cours?
Non, j'ai rendez-vous.
Oh, tu m'as téléphoné?
D'accord.
Oui, oui.
Gérard,
Ah oui.
je n'ai pas ton numéro de téléphone.
Oh, c'est 07 00 38 0007.
Répète s'il te plaît.
Oh, c'est 07
07, oui.
00
00
38
38
00
00
07.
07.
Ah oui.
Bien, merci.
Je t'en prie.
À bientôt.
À bientôt.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Andy Kumara, je suis ougandais, j'ai 22 ans, j'habite à Nairobi, je suis charpentier. J'ai un sac à outils que j'utilise pour garder mes outils. J'utilise une scie pour couper le bois. J'utilise un marteau pour m'atteler les clous. J'utilise une roboteuse pour plaindre le bois lisse. J'utilise un ruban à mesurer pour mesurer la longueur. J'utilise un stylo pour écrire le texte. J'utilise un casque pour protéger la tête. Je suis étudiant à l'université de Kabale. J'aime le français. Merci.
Voilà. I would like just to add that these are beginner students who are in their first year of French, and you can see what they have done. So des étudiants en français en France qui ont débuté leurs études en français à l'université de Kabale. Merci beaucoup, cher président, de m'avoir accordé cette occasion de présenter les résultats.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayebare Boniface. I think you can now take your seat for a while and you can get a bottle of water. And let me now invite Associate Professor Milborga Achero. I think you can come here and engage the candidate. We'll give you 1 hour to engage the candidate, but if you can take less than that, we'll be grateful. So let me also request the student to take the podium. I think you can go with your water. You take the podium, you can go with your water, and then we have this conversation between the two.
Thank you very much, Chair. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur. I would like to start by thanking the candidate for the rigorous presentation you've made this afternoon. I would like to appreciate the supervisors, Associate Professor Edith Natukunda and Dr. Enoch, and all those who supported you in the journey to this level. Thank you so much. And thank you to every friends, family, and so forth for supporting our colleague, our friend, a doctor to be Boniface. You know, into a person who loves project-based learning so much. It is in my blood. And I was following you strictly and carefully, and I was trying to see whether you are going to embrace me, whether you're going to bring out some of the key words I would like to hear about project-based learning. And now that you mentioned that the Minister of Education sent actually a directive to all the universities in this region, in this country, to actually align the curriculum to the A-level competence-based way of teaching. And she's already expressing fear that by 2027, when the first cohort of the A-level competence-based reach the universities, her fear is, shall we be ready? But I think we've tried in our own ways to allay her fears, to say, look, universities have been indirectly doing project-based learning without knowing that they are actually practicing competence-based learning approach. It's an approach. Okay, it's an approach to engage the learners, to make sure that you engage them in the real world activities. I like the video because the video has shown that even if they are beginners, they are able to survive in the real world. So project-based learning shows us the transformative role of this approach in teaching, and I wanted to hear the word assessing because you know, it puts emphasis on formative assessment. Formative assessment should not, you know, slip your mouth. It's very important. When you talk about logbook use, why should they use logbook? Okay, I'm just trying to give my background to say how I will come with questions for you. But why should they use logbooks? Because at MOOBS, when our students go for internship, they use logbooks as well. Okay, so why should we have focus groups? You must have a reason for this. When you try to test, to implement project-based learning, to assess language acquisition, UN acquisition. You want to see whether students of tourism or engineering can communicate at their level in the real world of work, and I've seen it. So it's crucial to you to also look at the words like formative assessment, because our traditional system is more of summative. We want to see marks. We want to see marks. But you're proving to us that project-based learning is the way to go. So I'm kindly asking you to note somewhere where I'm going to be asking you to talk about the importance of project-based learning in language acquisition, more so in French. So your topic is very interesting, it's current, and it's just tickled quite many of us. And I believe you've sent the word, the signal to all universities to say, look, even with our French for beginners, project-based learning can be implemented. And then you've talked about its impact on, it touches on how to improve on societal issues, to solve societal problems. This is the language that the competence-based approach is using in secondary schools. And probably, to give you a small background, why competence-based approach was finally accepted by this country, the National Curriculum Development Center did a research in this country in 2010 in about 200 companies within Kampala and outside Kampala. They were looking at the graduate of senior 4, how they survive in the real world of work. Their findings were very interesting. After senior 4, our students, our candidates cannot even communicate in English. Communication skills were lacking. They could not even calculate, even act as a cashier. There was a lack in that aspect. They were lazy. They were lazy. This is what the owners of the companies were saying. They were lazy, all right? And then their English language was dreadful. They could not speak. How can they speak when we just go to class and we stand in front and we just give them information? You've involved them, okay? Vous les avez responsabilisés. You made them responsible for language acquisition. This is the way to go, okay? Project-based learning helps you to move away from being a custodian of knowledge to empower the learners and help them fit in the work. So, plus so many other findings where it belong. Because, you know, if you go to our hotels today, the way they serve you, you know, in their own ways, they don't care, the way they drug themselves. So it says, let's see how we change the curriculum. Then we have people who are, you know, active learners, not passive learners. It comes from that actually. Passive learners are people who are now listening to me now, talking on that. But your findings today are going to open our eyes to say, let's also try to leave space for these children because they are not stupid. You said so in your presentation. So with that, I want to appreciate your involvement, your research, and say that probably by the end of it all, we shall see whether you're passing or not, but you've impressed me as an opponent and as a well-wisher and supporter of this learning. And I pray that your Vice Chancellor, who is playing a big role, that all universities should embrace this approach and help the learners exercise their responsibilities in whatever they are learning. Because you're preparing them for the world of work, all right? Not to come and just listen and recite what you've given them. All right, so dear Mr. Ayebare, I followed your presentation very, very, very closely with keen interest. I read your book thoroughly. I'm the one actually who made sure that they changed your date to today. I wanted to appreciate your work and see whether I'm able to, you know, also satisfy you with my questions. I want to start on methodological rigor. Thank you so much for the rigor you've shown us. So your study employs a qualitative case study, right? Designed with purposive sampling. Given the relatively short duration, I think you took about 3 months to implement your case study and modest sample size. Of course, I know our students are usually not many in our French classes. How do you justify? The transferability of this model, this beautiful model of your findings to other French for specific purposes in Chamgo University, Makere University, MUBS, Muni University? How do you justify the generalizability or transferability of your findings to other force contexts in Uganda or even the East African community? Because Kabale is next to our neighborhood countries like Rwanda, where French is still spoken. So how do you justify the transferability of this modest sample size to these other universities?
Thank you, Prof, for that question. Yes, the study was qualitative in nature because it's under qualitative study that you can really understand what is happening. You understand what people are going through, lived experiences. This cannot be done through a quantitative study. It cannot be done through counting, through measuring. And the purposive technique which we adopted, mainly you select participants based on your objectives, what you intend to achieve, and depending on their characteristics. Now, the sample size was more, we used a case study. Now, when you adopt a case study as a research design, you focus on either a single case or a few cases to understand, to do an in-depth analysis of what the case is about and how it works. So under this PBL, since it's a novel approach in teaching, we thought this case study would be appropriate. In that case, we chose Kabale University as a case study. And the two groups to understand exactly what happens in force, especially in tourism, which is common. This is the area of force which you can find in most of the universities. Then engineering, which is less common. Now, when you go to these other universities, you find they are teaching force, like MOOBS is teaching tourism, French for tourism. Now, this new approach, the PBL approach, has not been adopted even in the teaching of force. Actually, this study combines PBL and force. So, are these results, despite the small sample size, can they be generalized? And the answer is yes. And how can it be done? We have come up with a model, a number of strategies. If you want to implement project-based learning, this is a model that you can use. These are strategies that you can use, but you have to be careful. Because when you are teaching force, you need to analyze the needs of the learners. You can't do force without making a needs analysis. So the results of our study can be used as a model, can be used to implement force. But each case must be analyzed in detail, and you can't, yes, you can use our product, but when you are designing a project that is suitable for your learners, you need to do a needs analysis and be able to implement a project that cuts across, that is suitable for the specific learners that you want to teach. So the direct answer is yes, the results can be generalized, but you have to do a needs analysis of the group that you want to teach.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ayebare. Do you think you only used qualitative approach?
Yes, my study was largely qualitative. Yes, there were some numbers in the study. Having numbers in a study does not make it mixed method or quantitative. The numbers in the study were only used to inform the qualitative analysis, but the study was qualitative in nature.
Why did you use interviews, observations, logbook, and video analysis?
There is what we call triangulation in research. Triangulation is a combination of different methods to ensure validity and reliability. When you use logbooks, the learners and the researcher, for example, who are noting day by day what has transpired. Okay? Then, but to be able to understand exactly what the person wrote, you combine that with interviews. For example, by sharing with students, here you wrote this. There was a challenge here. What exactly was it? How did you solve it? At the beginning, we conducted a needs analysis by interacting with students, and then these categories, like the professionals, the teachers of French, okay? Why do you want to learn French was a key question. Why are you learning French? Why do you think it is important? So when you use these different methods, they make the studies more valid and more reliable. And that is why we used logbooks, interviews, focus group discussions, observations, both participant and non-participant, because through that, you can be able to tell, even what is not said verbally, you can be able to tell through observation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. My next question is on theoretical integration. You synthesized 4 educational theories. I saw Piaget, Vygotsky, Dewey, and Freire into a 3-pillar conceptual framework, right? Could you elaborate on how this synthesis specifically shaped your data collection instruments and analysis procedures?
Thank you, Prof. Actually, if you noted here, I presented 3 theories, but in the book, there are 4 theories. The first theory was the constructivist theory by Jean Piaget. Now, Jean Piaget, this is a Swiss psychologist who studied the cognitive development of children. What did he find? That a child develops his own knowledge through interaction with the environment. But according to him, knowledge cognitive development is an individual process. He says a learner has already some knowledge and the teacher is coming to add. He considers this as an individual process, which Lev Vygotsky somehow does not agree with. Lev Vygotsky's social constructivist theory now adds the social components. Lev Vygotsky emphasizes that a learner develops knowledge through interaction with others, with peers, with teachers. Zone, now to answer that, the zone of proximal development, which is a key tenet in the theory of Lev Vygotsky, emphasizes that when you are teaching, there is what a learner already knows. But to be able to move from what the learner knows to what he doesn't know, you need some kind of scaffolding. Scaffolding is this encadrement, soutien temporel, some kind of temporary support that you give to the learner to be able to move beyond the zone of proximal development. Now, in the entire project-based learning and the project we implemented, we had this in mind. When you give a task to the learner, write a text introducing yourself in French. Are they able to do it? You find they can maybe talk about themselves without talking about their friends. Now, with a bit of scaffolding, you enable them to go beyond the zone of proximal development. Now, the theory of John Dewey complements the other two theories because it emphasizes experiential learning. This PBL and all learner-centered approach are experiential. You learn by doing. And this is the main contribution that John Dewey did. Now, the other fourth theory, which wasn't emphasized here, wasn't presented, is Paulo Freire, this Brazilian. And for him, the emphasis is on critical thinking. La pensée critique. Okay? There is what he calls to be fed with information. No, they are supposed to be stimulated to think critically. Now, the reason I didn't present Paulo Freire critical thinking theory is John Dewey already has some aspects of critical thinking, but they are not explicit. So I thought, for purposes of those who read my book, adding that fourth theory of critical thinking by Paul Freire would reinforce these three other theories, and all these were used throughout the data collection, the data interpretation, and the analysis of my findings.
Thank you so much. You see, I was telling you that you're actually reawakening the project-based learning approach in me. And then now we're talking about education theories, learning theories. I talked about Piaget. You know, what do you see in Piaget? Like from your video, Piaget has contributed to, Piaget's constructivism has guided the use of the video. You know, the video or the use of authentic language, authentic tasks in establishing, in developing a video. That is the contribution of that constructivism in your study. And while Vygotsky's social constructivism justifies the focus on collaborative environment, you do realize that in secondary schools we still have this selfish attitude that I'm the brightest person. I do not want to work with others. But social constructivism helps you to have a collaborative environment. So I'm glad you've brought this out nicely. Thank you. Taking you to policy and curriculum alignment. We've all been fighting about this for all the foreign languages, which were really, sidelined. No proper policy to protect them at secondary schools. We also try to fight for them at the university. You mentioned that there's a Uganda's lower secondary school competence base of. So based on your findings, I'm still going back to your findings, what concrete steps would you recommend to bridge this, curricular gap in the national policy level?
Thank you, Prof, for that question. Actually, when I started this study in 2020, I tried to look for data about this competence-based learning in universities. I didn't find any. I moved around universities. I had done part of this PBL at my master's in France, and we were implementing projects. So when this the new lower secondary curriculum was introduced in 2020, I thought it was a very good and innovative way and the way to go. But up to 2024, up to the time I was writing this thesis, the universities were not involved at all in the implementation. In fact, we were wondering what is going to happen. They first focused on O level and later moved to A level. But universities were left out completely. The first official document, because I contacted UNEB, NCDC, different stakeholders, the first official document to universities was on 9th July 2025. In fact, I thought somehow the First Lady had read my work and thought...
Maybe you sent it to her.
and
yes.
And probably thought she should also awaken universities.
Yes.
So this letter was addressed to the Chairperson National Council for Higher Education and copied to different universities, instructing them to prepare for learners who are going to be universities in 2027. For me, one of the recommendations that I had put in my work was already achieved even before I make my presentation. So one of the recommendations, universities adopt these approaches, there is already a tick. But this is not enough. This letter is a guideline. Universities are not prepared at all. You ask them to implement project-based learning. What does it take? What is required? What strategies will they go through? You don't just move from one approach to another. And I can bet, if these institutions do not do adequate planning, this gap will not be easily closed. So now the purpose and the main objective of my study is to ensure that we start this journey together. We begin by putting in place strategies. Some of the institutions, like Kabale University, some departments, we have already gone ahead. We have already started using project-based learning in certain departments. So I believe that this is going to be shared, like it has already been presented in at least in 2 international conferences. I have made 3 publications with guides on how to implement project-based learning. So I hope and pray that the universities can now read my work and get guidance on how best they can implement project-based learning.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ayebare. Chairman, do I still have time? Okay, fine. Fine. How do you see the collaboration between the Ministry of Education to revise force or all university curricula to include pragmatic and professional competencies aligned with regional development goals? Do you have a feel that even without your study that the Ministry of Education is really planning to revise not only the force but the entire university syllabus to include the pragmatic aspect? Because if you don't put emphasis on that, we are going to come here, learn how to know whatever is given to us, we vomit it back in exams, and in the real world we can't perform.
Thank you, Prof. Now, when you come to force, there's actually a big paradox between the national language policy and the learning of French. Now, with the introduction of the new curriculum in 2020, French is actually at the periphery. Now, there is a paradox. Why? Because French, officially on 30th of November 2024, French became an official language of the East African community. Now, at the same time, the different schools have started dropping French because of the limited options in the new curriculum. Now, that means that French does not have space. So when we come to force, I think it is a challenge that should be faced and handled by universities, the Teachers Association. Now, when it comes to integrating these approaches with these pragmatic and soft skills, when we teach, and I think that's a challenge that we are facing at universities, we emphasize a lot on knowledge production. At best, we put a component of skill. But the soft and pragmatic skills, in most cases, are left out. Just one, like collaboration and teamwork, for example. If students come here at university, do their three-year course, in what aspect do you emphasize collaboration and teamwork? An aspect like timekeeping, I'll just give you an example. When we're implementing this project, our courses were always starting at 9 a.m. And I asked these students to go and interview some members of the administration. One member of the administration gave these students an appointment at 7:30 a.m. You can imagine, by 7:20, the students were calling me to tell me they were already at the office and the person was not yet in. But because they knew this was a member of administration and they needed to be there in time, they had to ensure that they keep time. And I realized throughout the projects, whenever they had an assignment, they always kept time. Now, timekeeping is actually a pragmatic skill that we don't directly impart on our learners. Now, I can assure you, when you do a project, because a project by nature is long term, ours took about 3 months. When you do a project for 3 months, and the students or the learners are keeping time in their tasks, you can be sure that this skill of timekeeping is going to be transferred to other aspects of their professional life. Now, by government proposing and emphasizing these approaches, learner-centered approaches, they are already emphasizing these pragmatic and soft skills.
Thank you so much. Mr. Ayebare, I would like you to remember that the competence-based approach is instilling in the learners values and positive attitudes, patriotism. So all this can also influence your project-based learning at the university, all right? I want you to also remember that with project-based learning, you're actually practicing interdisciplinary approach. So when those learners get here, even those you are now you did a kind of case study on, they should demonstrate to you that they did not only use the French for tourism to solve the societal problem. They should mobilize all the necessary competencies to solve a societal problem. Okay, and that is what we want to see, and please emphasize this because it's what project-based learning wants to do. How do you solve a problem? You don't solve a problem by using only one approach. All right, that was just a comment. I'm also a little bit interested in knowing about learner autonomy and assessment when you carried out this project. I'm trying to see, you implemented logbooks for reflective writing, and you participated as well. So I'm trying to now to ask you about really the reliability and the validity of this formative assessment.
Thank you, Prof. If you read through the strategies I proposed for project-based learning, and this was based on empirical data from the study, one of the strategies is integrated formative assessment. Évaluation formative intégrée. Now, in most of the teaching, we emphasize, we do summative assessment. Summative assessment is done at the end of learning. In language schools, they do l'évaluation diagnostique or diagnostic assessment, which is done at the beginning in order to determine the level. But this formative assessment, which is done all through, is not emphasized. Now, in our projects, we introduced logbooks, and this was one of the key recommendations for project-based learning. Now, in logbooks, you record on a day-to-day basis what is happening, just to ensure that you keep track. So this was done both by the students and the researcher. I would on a daily basis record what has been, even challenges that have been faced, how they have been solved, and the learners would also do the same. Their experiences, what transpired. So how does now the validity and reliability. Now, through triangulation, we compared the results in the logbooks with the results from the other data collection methods, such as the focus group discussions, such as the interviews, such as the observation. See, if this day I recorded that this student came late or didn't participate actively, we are doing interviews and focus group discussion, I will try to understand, how did you feel this day? What was happening exactly? Now, through the qualitative approach and the interpretivism paradigm, you get to understand exactly what the learner was going through, what exactly was happening that day. So the combination of these methods ensured the validity and reliability of the findings, because we could easily cross-check the results collected through one method with the results collected through another method.
Thank you so much. How did you ensure that there was inclusivity during the project work?
Well, thank you, Prof. Inclusivity can be at different levels. When you are doing projects, there is one aspect that you have to take into account, the cognitive abilities of the learners, and it's one of the challenges in project-based learning. The language competence, because you find, like in the engineering group, we had 3 students who already had studied French up to, I think, senior 1 of them. The rest of the groups, the rest of the students were starting from 0. Now, their cognitive abilities, students don't learn the same way So when you are designing projects, you assess, you first understand their cognitive abilities and their language levels. But now this, the different levels, the diversity in their cognitive abilities and language levels can be a very big asset for project-based learning. How? Because if you have a task that requires support either from the teacher or more advanced learners, now that's where you bring in the scaffolding, which is emphasized by the theory of Lev-Vygotsky. So in this scaffolding, you might find that now the teacher might not need to intervene by pairing students who don't have any background in French with students who have some bits of knowledge in the language. You find that these students who are starting at zero, are learning from their peers. That's scaffolding, and they can therefore be able to go beyond their zone of proximal development, meaning to be able to do what they initially weren't able to do because of interaction with their peers and with more advanced learners.
I can see you did this thesis yourself, Mr. Ayebare. Thank you so much. I can see you did it. But I'll get you somewhere, whether you were two people doing the thesis or whether it was you alone. I'm going on to one more question in English on digital literacy and equity. You do realize that competence-based approach has brought in the integration of ICT, which has never been there. So it's integration of ICT skills in learning and in assessment. So during your project, you integrated the use of smartphones, I think, cameras, and editing software. I've seen the video. So they were central to the project-based learning. I want this to come out prominently, and because people run away from ICT, especially our age. But me, I'm ICT, I adapt easily. So the digital, let me say, integration of smartphones and software, editing software are central to project-based learning experience. How did you address the potential, digital divide? We're in Kabale, all right? How did you address the potential disparities in digital access and skills among the students? That's the first question for that.
Thank you, Prof. Ladies and gentlemen, dear scholars, we are now in a digital era. In learning, this must be integrated. And one of the recommendations I made in the strategies is to include that digital literacy. I don't know if you realize, but this video that we produce, but actually there is a longer version of the video. This was just some extracts from that video. All this work was done by the students. We could have hired an expert to come and do the video recording and do the video production, but we didn't. Why? Because we wanted students to be directly in charge of their projects. So we did, they recorded themselves. All these videos you are seeing, people introducing themselves, they were recorded by their peers using their smartphones. And after they put these videos together, the video editing, they have skills which personally I don't have, because I don't have the skills of video editing. No. The beauty of project-based learning is that students, you'll find students who have these skills, a student who can do video editing. And now because we also had an engineering group, we noted that these engineers, usually when it comes to IT, they have more advanced skills. So by combining students who were from remote areas, who some of them didn't even have smartphones at the beginning, by combining them with students who had these tools, who could use them we ensured that these who didn't have the digital literacy skills also learned something, because we would put them in groups and they would do the projects together, record each other, do the video editing together, and finally agree on the final product. You'll see that's why some of the quality might not be perfect, because this was improvised through what they had. So they did this themselves, and we believe, and this is based also on the experiences that we got from this project. By the end of the project, even the students who are not able to record a good video, to do video editing, by the end of the project, all of them at least could be able to do something. So this PBL also enhances the digital skills of the learners.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ayebare. I wanted to hear about scaffolding. You know, you have people who also scaffolded the others at that level. So it means scaffolding should be flowing in your blood. You see it throughout, okay? So, yes, and then the students who were with stronger digital skills helped the others, right? And then, did you conduct training sessions prior to subjecting them to the project? If not, do you think it is necessary to conduct a training session for people who don't have the digital skills at all before you involve them into the project?
Thank you, Prof. The training session would be appropriate for the teacher. Now, for the students, there is what we call preparation. Maybe that's a phase that can go, that you can call training. Now, preparation of the project, where you prepare in detail what exactly you want to do, how you want to do it, what resources do you need. You look for the resources. Now, through that process, there is some kind of training. But in PBL, we don't call it training. We call it preparation. So you prepare for the project, ensure that you have all that it takes to conduct the project. Otherwise, the project won't be successful.
Okay. Where there is access, where there's limited access to digital gadgets, tools, what can be done by universities now? What can be done where there's limited access?
Kabale is a typical case study where there's limited access of these digital tools. There could be people in this room who have never been to Kabale. It is in a remote area in southwestern Uganda,
yes.
And you'll find even students without smartphones, their access to these digital tools is very limited. So this is actually why this design, the design of the case study, was very appropriate, because we picked this as a case study, and the reason they managed to produce this is they could improvise with whatever they had. Certainly in this era, you won't find an entire class without a person or two with smartphones. Some of them will have more advanced smartphones. So in a case where you have limited access to some of these tools, then you can use the few that might be available. Now, what is important to note is PBL. There is a danger of emphasizing the final product. And that's one of the pitfalls I presented. When you are doing project-based learning, you must keep in mind that the ultimate objective is not only to have a product, an end product. The learning process is equally or even more important than the final product. So it's not necessary to go to hire equipment for that process. You use what they have and take them through the process, and that is how skills are built.
Thank you so much. Why I'm putting emphasis is because institutions have laboratories, computer labs, but they ring fence them for people who are doing ICT. But with project-based learning today, we have no choice. Everybody's supposed to be ICT literate. Everybody's supposed to touch the computer for their project, right? I also want to agree with you, but I want to say project-based learning should demonstrate somebody's ability in give a bigger picture. What do I mean? If I'm teaching events management to my students of hospitality, and they've done projects to see they've put up events and so forth, I would like to see how they are going to put up an event, a fundraising event, to support a charitable organization. And then I'll know that they are actually solving a societal problem. It's just not for marks, but in the real world, they are able to solve that societal problem. And that is what the competence-based approach is advocating for. Today, whether you like it or not, our children in senior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are becoming investors, young investors at an early age. I can guarantee you, because of the project-based learning. So universities had rather style up very fast and start empowering the learners to embrace the project-based learning. I want to end the English questions by saying, what implications does this scaling of project-based learning through digital literacy have in a resource-constrained settings?
Resource constrained settings. This is a challenge. Before I touch it, I like to come back on the you talked about solving a societal problem. Project-based learning, you emphasize the learning process. You have a product, but actually all this begins by looking at a problem that you want to solve. In fact, it begins by identifying a problem. What is there that this society is facing? What problem is society facing? And when you are designing a project, it must be designed to solve a specific societal need. Now, in our case, when we held discussions at the beginning to analyze how Kabale University, the status of Kabale University, we realized many of the students who are in first year had reported to Kabale for the first time. They were first time in Kabale. Many of them had never even heard about Kabale University. It was new to them. And when it came to the region, people hardly knew that, for example, Kabale has very interesting tourist sites. So now that was a problem. Now we designed a problem, we designed a solution. So this project for us was intended to solve two problems. One, promotes Kabale University to make it known. But two, this Chigezi region, which is very touristic, has so many tourist sites, should also be promoted. So the project Welcome to Kabale or Bienvenue à Kabale was meant to solve that need, that problem of the university and the region which were not known. So it was towards solving that problem. Now, in a resource-constrained environment, and this does not affect only Kabale, I know it affects a number of other institutions. Now, how do we go about it? How do we implement projects in such resource-constrained environments? One is to begin with what we have. We did this project with our resources, the resources we had. But I'm actually happy to report that since then, Kabale University has now supported funding of other projects. In fact, this is going to be extended to other schools. As I talk now, they have already approved funding to go to different schools and create French clubs to ensure that this these projects that we are making with our students can also extend to the region. But the other important aspect, we must continue advocating for more resources. Huh? Like Oliver Twist. We must continue asking for some more. We know that our government, and I put it in one of my recommendations, government should really release, it's not enough for the Minister of Education to write to universities and ask them to implement project-based learning. Yes, that is a good gest. But let us ask them as well to increase funding to these institutions so that these projects can be implemented. You can't implement meaningful projects if there is a limit, if you don't have funding. So we must also continue advocating for funding so that we can implement more impactful projects.
Thank you so much. You know, the minister will tell you, my students in secondary schools are using low cost digital infrastructure. And that I'm even compelling universities to buy furniture from the prisons. Not from Samsung, not from those expensive places. I hope you're aware of this. So we can start by saying, let the universities invest in low-cost infrastructure and locally available resources. This is the song in those secondary schools. That's why when you give a project to be done by students, if they don't have the phones, the beauty is they'll run to the head teacher. Teachers, can I borrow your phone? I have some project work to do. These are the people who will join you in 2 years' time. So when they come to you for your phone, will you give? But they've picked the habit there. So this is really about project-based learning because you want them to do things. It's about doing, all right? So thank you so much for all those brilliant responses. I did say that I was going to find out whether this is your work or whether it is somebody's work. Do you have your thesis with you? If not, I'll go to page 71. I have the book, if you have it. Page 71, paragraph 3. Paragraph 3 is just for you to take note. You will adjust because we are not francophones. Sometimes we do this. When you say, les chercheurs jugent les chercheurs juger cette population d'études appropriées et pratiques puisqu'ils travaillent dans la même université, that is you. When you say le chercheur. And then you go ahead and say, cela nous a permis de profiter du temps. For me, I think there are two people here. Okay? Once you say le chercheur, those who teach French, le chercheur is the third person, and then nous. So I think you decide on one. I think in French, we either say je or the formal nous throughout. I also learned it the hard way when I did my PhD. Okay, so that one you can, it's just for a remark for you to change. And the last one is also, the last question is on page 83. You'll also try to see throughout the thesis, maybe there are such challenges. For instance, when it's selon, I would say selon Ayebare, in brackets, 2025. Okay? But if you go to page 83, paragraph 3, you've done Nyimbili and Nyimbili 2023, both in parenthèses. Alors j'ai dit, pourquoi est-ce que vous avez mis le nom entre parenthèses? It happens because you are trying to finish up your work. Donc essayez de vérifier tout, comme ça quand vous citez à l'intérieur du texte, que ce soit selon Ayebare, entre parenthèses 2025, essayez de voir ça. Je vais aussi continuer à travailler, à chercher les petites fautes comme ça pour vous aider à avancer dans les corrections. Sinon, merci beaucoup pour tout.
Merci beaucoup, madame la professeure. Je vous assure, j'ai déjà relu la thèse et j'ai très vite identifié ces petites erreurs et je vous assure que j'ai déjà tout corrigé.
Merci beaucoup et c'est fini. I'm done now, Mr. Chair.
Merci, Prof.
J'attendais une question en français, mais on n'a pas pu...
J'en ai. Monsieur Ayebare, j'ai fait des commentaires. Donc, avez-vous envisagé les billets liés à votre propre rôle en tant que chercheur? Ou comment avez-vous évité les billets? Comment avez-vous évité les billets liés à votre position à l'université? En tant que chercheur, vous vous êtes impliqué dans les logbooks, etc. Comment avez-vous évité les billets?
Merci beaucoup, madame. Au cours de la pédagogie de projet, hein, c'est un défi parce que l'enseignant doit à la fois s'impliquer dans le déroulement du projet, mais on doit aussi mener une recherche. Alors, comment est-ce qu'on peut éviter ce biais? C'est à travers l'utilisation des différentes méthodes de collecte de données. Par exemple, les tableaux de bord. On notait chaque jour ce qui passait. Moi-même, en tant que chercheur, j'étais obligé de noter. J'avais mon carnet de bord où je notais tout ce qui s'est passé. Et je demandais aux étudiants également de noter. Donc, mais pour vérifier et confirmer si c'était vraiment la vérité, si c'était vraiment ce qui s'était passé, j'étais obligé d'interagir avec des étudiants, de poser des questions, de vérifier certaines choses et de confirmer si c'est vraiment ce qui s'était passé. Mais, et puis pour le groupe de contrôle, j'étais obligé d'interagir également avec les enseignants qui étaient impliqués. Donc, à travers ces différentes méthodes de collecte de données, je crois qu'on peut assurer la validité et la fiabilité des résultats.
Oh, merci beaucoup. Donc, c'est fait de ma part.
Merci beaucoup, Prof.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Mirburga, pour cette intervention. Je voudrais également me remercier Monsieur Boniface d'avoir répondu aux questions. Merci. So we'd like to thank the critical discussant for this discussion. Thank you very much. Another round of applause. And we'd also like to thank Mr. Ayebare for responding to the questions very well. Thank you very much. So you are not yet done. We are now going to request the panelists. I'm going to start with Dr. Ibra. One or two questions. You can come here and engage the candidates, and then we shall request Dr. Samuel, and then finally we shall request Dr. Agat to engage the candidate.
Thank you, Chair. I want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Ayebare, the doctor-to-be, for the wonderful presentation. And also I want to thank the Prof from MOOPS for a very good engagement and the responses from Mr. Ayebare. I said that we are not yet done, but I can say almost done, since the Prof failed to, she looked to find out if you had any assistance or you had somebody whom you worked with on this dissertation, and I think she has failed. She has confessed in an hour's time that she has had with you. May I will have only one question, as also a teacher of languages. I teach Arabic. Mr. Ayebare, I want you to briefly tell us how can this research contribute to the broader field of language pedagogy and curriculum development in Uganda. More especially that it's coming at the right time when we are looking at transiting from our traditional approaches, and as you recommend that we need to adapt this approach so that we can be in line with so much touted CPC. Thank you, Dr. Ayebare.
Thank you so much for that question. How can this research or the findings of this research contribute to the broader area of language pedagogy and language development? The main contribution of this research, I take it to be this that can be used to do project-based learning. Now, in languages, we have generally been using traditional approach of teaching for so many years. And most of this, you'll agree with me, those who have learnt languages, that people who taught us in secondary school, they were the master of knowledge. They would teach you rules of grammar, ask you to repeat, as if the head was empty. Now this is changing, even with beginners. When we are teaching languages, we shouldn't assume that these learners don't have anything in their heads. Even just their experiences, especially adult learners, they already have some experience which they can base on to acquire even the language skills. So this is recommending to the teaching and learning of languages to use this approach and pick some of these strategies to implement project learning in the teaching of languages. And this applies, of course, this research focused on French for specific purposes, but it is not limited to that. The findings can be generalized not only to French, but to other languages as well, and not only to languages, even other areas, especially in higher institutions of learning. So this is one of the major contributions of this research that I believe can contribute significantly to language, to improving language teaching and language development.
Thank you so much. Maybe one last question. I want to find out from you if there are some other case studies on this approach, PBL, that informed your work. And indeed, if there is, how does your research extend it, or how does it challenge those works, those studies?
Actually, this project-based learning is novel in Uganda. Personally, I didn't, all the literature, I did extensive reading, and I didn't find any case studies of project-based learning in Uganda. However, this has already been done in other areas. I already told you, when I did my master's in France, we were already doing project-based learning. That's how I picked it up. Now, in Senegal, I presented in the two professors that implemented, that did project-based learning. And in the review of their literature, they critiqued project-based learning as not being contextualized to the African context. That's why they thought it was important to implement it in an African setting, which they did in Senegal. In Uganda, I didn't find any studies about project-based learning, despite the emphasis on learner-centered approaches. What I found that could be related to project-based learning is, and this is at times what people confuse, this what we call, especially in the teaching of French, perspective actionnelle, task-based learning. Because task-based learning and project-based learning are related. But task-based learning, c'est ponctuel. You perform a task at a single time. It is not over a period of time. The benefits of project-based learning, which is implemented over a period of time that combine several tasks, are different from those of task-based learning. So what has been done here is task-based learning. So project-based learning is somehow an improvement of task-based learning. They are related, but not the same. So project-based learning, I would say in Uganda, is still being developed. Even this study itself was not exhaustive, and I think we need to continue developing it together as scholars.
Thank you so much. Especially, I was going to come to that point of task-based learning and project-based learning. I wanted to seek for more clarification, but thank you that you've done it in advance. Once again, I want to congratulate you, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim. Let me now request Dr. Samuel Wandela to come and present your 1 or 2 questions.
Thank you. Monsieur Ayebare, je vous félicite.
Merci beaucoup.
Pour ce que vous avez fait jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Et bientôt, peut-être, tu vas être déclaré comme vous avez fait une bonne lutte jusqu'à aujourd'hui. I have a question I think I will ask in English for that interest. It's concerning sampling. You don't have your book, but on page 72, we said you have 22 students from tourism and 15 from engineering. And you used all of them in the that is what we call census, but you've called it sampling. Actually, a census brings more accurate results. Researchers resort to a sample because they are unable to access all items or members of the total population. So for you, you accessed all. That is better even. But I'm seeing you're calling it a sampling. Why? Is it because of bandwagon? All the researchers I see, they use sampling. For I was waiting. I've never actually seen one, but I thought now for you, since these are very few people, you can access all, you would call it a census. Maybe you will explain something on that.
Thank you, Doctor. That's an interesting question. I've been having a debate with a number of scholars. Already, I'm sure that Dr. Tubasima here, when you talk of sampling, he will disagree with you. Because in qualitative studies, we actually talk of participant selection and not sampling. Sampling is used a lot in qualitative studies. But when you do sampling, a sample is taken out of a population. When you conduct a study, you must first identify your study population. Who are those potential participants to your study? Usually they are stated numerically in a study. Now, out of that population, you pick out a sample. Okay? Or call them participants. Now, population involves all potential participants. Now, in my particular study, my population was all students of French for specific purposes at Kabale University. And they are not limited to year 1. We have them in year 1, year 2, year 3. Now, out of that population, I had to select my appropriate participants. And how did I do it? The technique I used is purposive sampling. You look at the population and identify that part of the population that you think is going to help you meet the study objectives. So when I looked at the population or the students of force, considering my study objectives, I decided to choose only 2 groups, considering their numbers, considering their characteristics. So I decided to go with only 2 groups, and that was first year students of tourism and engineering, and they were composed of only 37 students. This was not an entire population. It was, so it couldn't have been a census.
Okay, it's clear to me about that. I thought the total population was 37 and then the sample was also 37.
No, that was the sample, not the total population.
Good. Then I was interested in the video that you showed us, a clip here, and entitled Bienvenue à Kabale. You said that the idea came from Bienvenue en France book, which has got a series of videos, and Tom 1 of Bienvenue en France has got 12 longer videos. In your explanation, you said that what we saw was just a clip, but it is a bit longer. So do you have a series of these videos, Bienvenue à Kabale, or it is only one? And do all students do exactly the same thing? The tourism students following that same video, the engineering same video, or you have separate ones since their needs are different according to your objective 1?
Thank you, Doctor. Actually, how this video was recorded, for us would record sessions. All the sessions of the project would be recorded. And eventually we made a longer video, which is about 1 hour, 15 minutes. At the beginning, they are introducing themselves. In the next part, you see someone is introducing a colleague, another one asking questions and getting phone number. Then in the other part, you'll see a student of engineering talking about the tools they use. But there are other, where they are in the restaurant, they are ordering something to eat. The engineering students are on the site, someone is ordering, asking for tools, use this and that. So it is a longer video. If we had time, I even have it here, I could present it to you. But in the interest of time, I had to pick out just a few aspects of that video. So they are not doing the same thing. It is a series of activities that they are doing. I must emphasize that these were projects of students who are learning. If I can show you what they had at the beginning, these ones you saw introducing themselves, I have even the videos they made at the beginning. Someone could even hardly say their name. But by week 2, week 3, they keep improving. By week 10, you saw some of them could talk about themselves almost fluently. That is now project-based learning. So all these videos can be combined to make one video. And I intend, of course, this can be a future project to develop this video. Bienvenue à Kabale. To develop it into a full learning project like Bienvenue en France, so that we have these different episodes. I saw Apo has already done something. Chez le médecin, chez le dentiste, and this is something that I have also done, and resources by me. This was done purely for my research, but it could be done as an independent project if I manage to get the funding. And
okay,
the resources
I am satisfied
required.
with that. Je ne sais pas si le président me permet une seule question en français.
Oui.
Oui. Vous avez parlé que la communauté est-africaine a adopté le français comme troisième langue officielle. Et pourtant, l'Ouganda ne s'inquiètent pas avec le français, ils n'ont pas mis l'accent sur le français. Ça se trouve dans votre problématique.
Ouais.
Qu'est-ce que vous conseillez au gouvernement ougandais et les parties prenantes?
C'est vraiment un défi pour notre pays et ça relève de la politique linguistique du pays. Depuis le 30 novembre 2024, officiellement, le français est une langue officielle de la communauté de l'Afrique de l'Est. Mais depuis 2020, le français n'est pas accordé la priorité dans les écoles. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire? Le plaidoyer. On doit demander au gouvernement de revoir la politique linguistique du pays et d'accorder la priorité au français. Et ça, la tâche nous revient tous. Notamment en tant qu'enseignant de français, on doit travailler ensemble pour convaincre le gouvernement d'accorder une priorité à la langue française. C'est quand même une langue internationale, c'est une langue des Nations Unies, c'est une langue de l'Union africaine et maintenant c'est la langue de la communauté de l'Afrique de l'Est. Juste à côté, il y a la RDC, le Congo, qui est francophone. Donc si on doit profiter des opportunités, on doit vraiment apprendre le français, accorder la priorité au français. Et ça doit revenir à la politique linguistique du pays qui, à mon avis, doit être révisée. Voilà.
Ok, je m'arrête ici et merci beaucoup de vos réponses.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Wandela. Let me now invite the last panelist, Dr. Agathe. I would like to say that we are joined by our principal in the house, Associate Professor Kabale. Thank you for joining us as we conclude, this academic engagement in your college. Okay.
Merci beaucoup, comme dit notre chef du collège. Monsieur Ayebare, félicitations. Tu sais comment on se réjouit avec ta soutenance. Tu es presque là. So, I have 3 simple questions or maybe some clarifications. And one of them will be in French, but 2 will be English. And once again, thank you so much for this study, which we feel is really very helpful and very enriching, especially for teachers of French. And I know there is a very big audience listening out there, and some of them who are not able to be here. I will ask a question on their behalf. I already saw it somewhere. But let me begin with a question in English, especially to clarify, maybe to either I didn't get it clearly or somehow I missed it. Especially, I would like to know, you presented your theoretical framework where you said, here you have 3 theories that you presented, that you worked with. Then the 4th one, which was not presented today because it is related with the experiential learning theory. But now I would want to know clearly, comme on dit en français, concrètement, how did you apply the 3 theories, especially while interpreting your results? I don't know if I got
Maybe
one at a time.
I should answer. Huh? Okay, thank you, Doctor, for that question. How did I apply these theories? My first theory was the constructivist theory by Jean Piaget, which emphasizes that children construct their own knowledge as they grow. Now, while teaching, you keep this in mind that your learners already know something. Now, as I interpreted my results, this is what I kept in mind. We did project-based learning. So you give a task to someone and try to observe, even without giving detailed instruction. How does the person undertake the task? Now, when you compare with the constructivist theory of Jean Piaget, you realize that what you thought the student didn't know, they actually know. I was surprised that some of them could do video editing, which for me was a plus. Now, for the Lev Vygotsky's social constructivism theory, which emphasizes the zone of proximal development and the scaffolding, this was used a lot in while grouping students when we were forming groups to ensure that those students who are whose cognitive abilities were lower than their counterparts could benefit from them. Like those who had learnt French before could be put in the same group with those who didn't know anything before. So as they discussed, these ones could help the others. So I used that social constructivist theory of Lev Vygotsky in that way. Now John Dewey's theory is mainly about experiential learning, learning by doing. And this was actually the core of the project, where I left students, to do something concrete, not just teach them, give them knowledge and go home. No, do something concrete. And then the fourth theory, which I didn't present here, is about critical thinking, Paulo Freire's critical thinking theory. But this somehow is aligned with the John Dewey's experiential learning. As I tried to analyze the tenets of both theories, I realized that John Dewey also had some aspects of critical thinking which can only be developed through projects, when you are implementing projects. But now Paulo Freire, for him, brings it out more explicitly and emphasizes that it must be brought out while doing projects. So this is how the four theories in my work complement each other, and they were used right from the beginning as we implemented project. They were used to interpret the findings and to make the final conclusions and recommendations.
Okay, thank you so much, because I realized that the same theories for people who follow what happens in the Kalfu camps, those are the same theories that are applied, much as we don't mention that this is such and such theory, but practically those are the three theories that are related to such activities. Now, la question en français, la question in French, c'est une question en matière de concept, disons les définitions. C'est bien que tu as cité les travaux de Mangiat et Parpet de 2011. Et dans ces travaux, on définit clairement le concept de français sur l'objectif spécifique et le français de spécialité, clairement. Et ça, cette question-là, c'est pour les enseignants de français qui écoutent. Parce que maintenant tu es modèle de plusieurs professeurs, peut-être qui vont mener les mêmes études, qui vont bientôt commencer les études de master, etc. Est-ce que tu peux clarifier pour ces professeurs-là la différence entre le français sur l'objectif spécifique et le français de spécialité, surtout en tenant compte des faits que parfois, surtout les besoins, en matière de besoins, il y a des besoins immédiats et puis les besoins à long terme, selon Mangiat et Parpet.
Très bien, merci beaucoup, Dr Agathe. Je sais que vous parlez de Mangiat et Papa parce que récemment vous étiez en France et vous avez eu l'occasion de la rencontrer physiquement. Moi, quand j'étais là, j'avais cité ces travaux, mais je n'ai pas eu cette occasion. Donc, j'étais vraiment ravi d'apprendre que vous l'aviez rencontré en France. Alors, pour bien comprendre le concept de force, en fait, il faut commencer par français langue maternelle. C'est quoi langue maternelle? C'est quoi français langue seconde? C'est quoi français langue étrangère? Alors, à partir du moment où on comprend le concept de français langue étrangère, on peut très facilement comprendre le FOSS. Parce que le FOSS, en fait, relève du français langue étrangère. Mais le FOSS, il y a une très petite différence entre le français, le français sur l'objectif spécifique et le français de spécialité. C'est ça? C'est la question que vous posez. C'est ça? Alors, quelle est la différence? Alors, le FOSS passe nécessairement et obligatoirement par l'analyse des besoins. Ça, c'est la différence principale. Pour le français de spécialité, on se limite aux terminologies dans les domaines spécialisés, comme la génie, la médecine, le droit. Il y a les termes qui sont spécifiques pour ces différents domaines. Alors, à partir du moment où on isole les étudiants de leurs objectifs et on les limite à leur domaine d'études, là on parle du français de spécialité. Et quand on enseigne le français à l'université, on a tendance à penser qu'on enseigne le français de spécialité. C'est vrai. En fait, parce qu'il y a une très petite différence. D'une façon ou d'une autre, c'est le français de spécialité. Mais le FOSS dépasse largement le français de spécialité. Lorsqu'on enseigne le FOSS, on doit analyser les besoins des apprenants. On doit, si on fait la pédagogie de projet, on doit concevoir un projet qui prend en compte les besoins des étudiants. J'aime plutôt parler des apprenants, parce qu'il y a une différence entre étudiants et apprenants. Bon, mais comme on a affaire avec l'université, là on parle des étudiants. Donc le FOSS, pour le FOSS, on fait l'analyse des besoins. Quels sont ces étudiants? Pourquoi ils apprennent le français? Pour faire quoi? Qu'est-ce qu'ils vont faire après? On les prépare d'une façon à une autre de se préparer pour la vie professionnelle. Et dans le nouveau curriculum, là on souligne ça parce qu'on doit préparer nos étudiants et nos élèves pour la vie professionnelle. La vie à l'extérieur de l'école. Et pour bien préparer les étudiants de l'université, pour bien enseigner le français qui répond à leurs besoins, mesdames et messieurs, on est obligé de faire l'analyse des besoins de ces étudiants. L'analyse des besoins de ces étudiants relève du FOSS. Pour le français de spécialité, on ne fait pas l'analyse des besoins. C'est ça la grande différence.
Oui. D'autres grandes différences, en tout cas d'autres, c'est que le français de spécialité, le public est spécifique dans un contexte universitaire avec un public capté. En tout cas, on utilise le mot capté.
Voilà, merci.
Okay, the last one. We tried, yeah, it's very short. Actually, combine the two short ones. One, yes, this is project-based learning. And according to your presentation, when you made situation analysis, you realized that in the curricula, both for French for tourism and for engineering, they were all using materials, teaching materials especially, which are not contextualized. In other words, they just get a French book meant for France, and they are just using. So, as we talk about adopting this kind of approach for teaching, especially for teaching French, what advice would you give to a lecturer of French in a university, especially getting the teaching learning materials for such kind of situations? And the last one, which, because I don't want to ask you the last question, which is also a little bit humoristique, comme on dit en français. Your slide about justification, you indicated 9th July of 2025, which is almost 2-3 months ago, and yet the study started 2021. If you had an opportunity of finishing this PhD before when the minister sent out this directive, what would you put on that slide? Thank you.
I begin with the last question. My justification is basically about the need for universities to adopt learner-centered approaches such as project-based learning. And this is drawn from the introduction of the new competence-based curriculum in 2020. It kind of inspired me. How come they're emphasizing schools, yet these children are going to be coming to university soon? So I thought of designing a project or a study that somehow answers this. Fortunately for me, I had done some little research about it, and I thought I should start it now. Along the way, there was this this challenge, because universities never received any official communication, and this official communication only came a few months ago. Okay, I actually added it to my slides, but I thought they had maybe kind of read some of my work and then decided to la première question c'était
le matériel. Teaching materials. How do you advise the person who is going to develop, such a strategy, who is going to use that approach? What are we going to use as teaching materials, especially specifically for the French subject where you did your research? Why am I asking this? I can clarify. It's not necessarily for universities. We're talking about learners who are leaving secondary schools. They are not only coming to universities, they're also those who are going to other higher institutions of learning. So I'm talking for those people who are teaching such tertiary institutions who have to adopt this methodology in a situation where you don't have le matériel pédagogique surtout contextualisé.
Yes, this contextualized teaching materials was one of the challenges that I identified. I told you, as when I started this study, I started by analyzing what the universities were teaching. Now, it is good, the universities have already this will. They want to introduce French in tourism. They say, we have French for tourism. We have legal French for lawyers. We have French for engineering for engineers. Now, you find what is being taught. You find the same book, le même manuel, méthode d'enseignement, being used for tourism. It is taken to engineering. It is taken to law. Now, when you look at these materials in detail, you find that they are not actually addressing the needs of those specific areas in which they are teaching. They remain general, and they are not limited only to being general in terms of content, but they are not even contextualized to Africa and to the Ugandan context in particular. What is the way forward? The advantage is that you and I have already started the journey. We have already started creating materials that can be used by these groups. UP4 is already rolling out a very interesting project of producing contextualized materials. I think this is a challenge for UP4. It might not be an individual challenge. I have identified a problem. I have tried to put a brick as a way of laying the foundation. It's good UP4 is coming on board. It is a challenge that as teachers of French, we need to embrace, but even other areas in your different fields, it might not be only French teaching. We have to see what materials can be used that are now contextualized. Where we don't have them, we have to create them. It is our duty.
Merci et encore une fois, félicitations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci, Doctor.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Agathe Mwine. Let's give her another round of applause. So we have come to the end of the panelists asking questions, but you know this is a public defense, and we are going to give you the members of the public to ask questions, but because of the time constraints, we are going to limit the questions. Farouk, do we have questions, online? So people who are online, if you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and we shall give you an opportunity. Let's have that screen so that we can be able to see those who are online. Et si vous avez une question en français, vous pouvez aussi poser cette question si vous êtes en ligne. On va vous donner une chance aussi. Et après, on va retourner ici. Any questions for those people who are online? Okay, so as you think about your questions, let me bring the questions back here to the house. Farouk, can we have the other, do we have 1 or 2 microphones? So if you have a question, briefly ask that question. No comments, no, I think we have had enough, just a brief question, and then we'll let the candidate respond. So let me start with Dr. Isaac Tbasimwa. Et si vous avez une question en français, vous pouvez aussi poser cette question.
If you were not my teacher. Just a quick one, Ayebare. Did you say there is no work on project-based learning in Uganda? There is none.
What many of the scholars had talked about was task-based learning. But in the field, I think there is, for example, in medicine and in other fields, not French, and in any case, not French for specific purposes. I personally didn't find any specific. The question was on specific case studies about project-based learning in the teaching of force, which I didn't find. I found some project work in other areas, and that is why I identified the gap in force, which I used for my study.
Interestingly, that's not what you said earlier. Thank you.
Have I now made a clarification?
And I also hope you're not confusing project-based learning with problem-based learning, like the case at medical school. That's all I wanted to say. I am done.
Okay, thank you, IT. Our principal, we can take the microphone, Farouk.
I almost asked the question in French, but for the benefit of others.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
If you had 3 minutes to speak to the Minister of Education, what would you tell her?
Okay, see, if you had 3 minutes to speak to the Minister of Education, what would you tell her? Can we have another question so that, he can take them together? Any other question? Okay.
Je suis le professeur Donsa, étudiant le français. Mine is a compliment to the group of panelists. You gave my friend those 5 minutes to articulate the entire thesis in French. I don't understand so much French, but I enjoyed the body language. He was natural, more natural. I wish we adopt such, because this allowed him to communicate to us, the public.
And if you didn't know, French is a romantic language. So do we have any other question from the public here? Okay, there is a question from Associate Professor Ayukoro there.
Thank you so much, candidate. I think you spoke really beautifully, and I was listening in both languages, even if I don't know both. My question was a very interesting one in the context of your findings. You said engineering students preferred written approach to the tourism students. Did you ever bother to find out why, based on the constructivist logic? They were constructing learning, but why did they prefer different things? And did that influence the design of the project going forward? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't think we have any question online. Those are just mere comments. I will also ask you a question or two, because I'm a chair, I think I can even ask more questions. Thank you, Bonnie, for this presentation. You talked about your time scope. Can you remind us of the time scope?
Yes, between Feb and April 2023. That was the time for collecting and analyzing the data.
So what's the difference between the time scope and the time you take, to study, or the study duration?
In research, the time scope, normally the scope has a component of time, and that is the time you actually undertake the study. You collect the data and analyze it. In this case, it was project-based learning. So the project was implemented during those 3 months.
Okay, I think we can stop there, Boniface. Yeah. You will need, to go back and find out what time scope is. I think what you presented in your study is the time you took, to collect data, not the time scope. So you will just, get back with the supervisors and look at that concept. You have given us, the 3 theories. Of course, you also added the 4th theory. And these theories, date 1926. Then I think there was a version of 1952, another one 1934, 1960, another one 1938. This sounds, quite oldish, if I can use an expression. So couldn't you have found other theories, relevant theories or versions that could have been used in your study? For example, there is experiential learning by Dave Kolb. There is situational learning by Lave and Wenger, and these are suitable, to your work. So why did you have, to look at these old theories? Aren't you telling us about, old things, and yet you are looking at project-based learning, which is a new issue?
Thank you, Chair. These are the theories that underpinned the study. Actually, if you looked at what I presented in my literature, there are developments in these theories. These are classic scholars who developed these theories, but these theories have been developed over time. I don't know if you had the chance of looking at my thesis, but in that book I explain how these theories have been critiqued, developed, and improved over time up to the moment the project-based learning was introduced here in Uganda.
Okay, thank you. There was a question by the principal. Could you answer that? And then the other question by Professor.
Yeah, thank you. 2 questions. If I met the Minister of Education, what would I tell her in 2-3 minutes? I'd first of all start by appreciating the communication she made a few months ago about universities adopting these learner-centered approaches, and I would emphasize that as a person in charge of that docket, they facilitate the process of transforming from the previous teaching approaches to these learner-centered approaches. That would be my main point to her. And for the colleague who asked about why engineering students, we made this interesting finding. Students of tourism are more attracted and are more pulled towards spoken French. And when we went into an understanding why this is so, we found that these students already, even at university, are given assignments where they interact with French-speaking tourists. Some of them go to Bunyonyi, they go to hotels, and you find that they are already interacting with these tourists. So they have actually some kind of intrinsic motivation, and the objective of learning French is to use it immediately in their day-to-day life, and which is much linked to their professional life after school, and they do more of oral interaction. While for students of engineering, there is less interaction at the moment, but most of what they do is like read books, understand manuals in French, understand how to give instruction. So most of the content that they relate with is written content, and you find that's why they want to do more of writing than the speaking compared to their counterparts in the tourism sector.
I hear you. Thank you very much, Mr. Boniface Ayebare. Let us give him another round of applause. The examination panel is now going to retreat for about 10-15 minutes. We request you to keep here, and then we shall come and announce the verdict. Those who are online, don't touch that dial. Keep there until you hear the verdict from the examination panel. Thank you very much. So this is a secluded session, so whatever happens there, it is between us here. Some time back, a PhD student was asking me, what do you do when you go there? And I told him, now that you are getting your PhD, you will know when you are part and parcel of that examination panel. I would like to welcome you back to this final phase of our public defense today. Those who are online would like to welcome you back. I think you have seen the haste with which we have done this, and that tells you maybe in advance the verdict of this examination panel. I would like to announce that the examination panel has found Mr. Ayebare Boniface worthy of the award of a PhD in Makerere University. So we have recommended that you be awarded the PhD, but of course it's not on a silver platter. There are corrections that you are going to make, minor corrections, and we are going to give you 3 months. But if you can do them within 2 weeks or 1 week, that's up to you, so that you can be on the graduation list for January or February. We are not yet sure. And the supervisors are going to oversee these corrections, and they will give you all the details about the things that you will need to work on before you can submit your final version of the thesis. So I would like to congratulate you. Thank you very much. I think the journey has been quite long. I would also like to congratulate the supervisors. Of course, they have been the midwives since we started this exercise. I know what it feels when you are there and your student is presenting. And I would also like to thank the critical reader who took time to engage. I think you have seen how voluminous this book has been, but Associate Professor Milburger took time and read closely and provided insightful remarks that are going to help to improve this work. We are also grateful to the examiners, Dr. Ibrahim Sare, Dr. Samuel Wandela, Dr. Agat Tumwine. We were supposed to have Dr. Chigun, but he was not here with us. And also Dr. Christian Kakuba, who also participated in the examination of this thesis. So thank you very much. And we'd also like to thank the members of the public who found time to be here with us. Thank you very much. And I think the celebrations can now start. We usually have that that tradition of taking photos. Those who have got, nice cameras, I think we are going to have the photos with the panel, and then thereafter we can have the photos with the supervisors and other people who may wish, to take photos with you. Our principal, I think she's online. I had wanted to say that, these hardworking people, needed to have been taken out Sheraton this afternoon, but we'll see to that in due time. So thank you very much. I have been Levis Mgumia, Head of Department Linguistics, English Language Studies and Communication Skills, who stood in for the Dean to chair this session. And have a lovely evening. Yes, we're not going into the photos, but the session is closed. Okay, sorry. So let me now invite Doctor to be, not doctor yet, Doctor to be, not yet, Bonnie, to say something.
Thank you so much, Chair, for the wonderful news. I'm happy to be coming to the end, towards the end of this journey that started about 4 years ago and coming to the end. I would like to, first of all, but I don't know how to say it, but I'm really deeply touched, and I deeply appreciate the effort put in by my supervisors. My supervisors, Professor Edith, Natukunda, Dr. Enoch Sebuyungo, really I'm so grateful. I think I owe this PhD to them. They have guided me right from the beginning when I started writing my concept all through up to today. I'm really so grateful. I have a number of friends who have impacted on my journey, who have helped me. Under the Up for Family, headed by Agat, I have another family in Kampala called Amda Free Thinkers, AMFT. Some of them are represented here. Your worship, you can stand up for recognition. I don't know where others are. All my friends, really, I'm so grateful. My immediate family, my sister Faith. There are so many people that have really touched me, that have really accompanied me throughout this journey. I have a group of friends, some of them might be online, who have really been pushing me, giving me all the moral, financial, spiritual support. I'm really so grateful. Of course, I can't forget to thank and acknowledge Kabale University, the entire fraternity, the administration, the head of the department, the students. Christine is a member of the French department at Kabale University. I don't think I would have completed this journey within this time had I not gone to Kabale University. Kabale University gave me a really supportive working environment to conduct my study, to implement my learning projects, and up to today, the institutional support that I have received is invaluable. And I hope that this journey that I'm completing and the knowledge I have acquired can be resourceful to the institution. I thank all of you for coming to listen to me. I know there are others who are still in the journey. Regent, I know will be coming back here for you. Last but not least, my mentors in French. Huh? We don't have so many PhDs in French, but in this room, we have maybe more than half. 5 PhDs in French in this room. I know 2 are at Kabale University. Those are 7. They have been with me. So I'm glad to be joining you. And we hope that we can work together to promote and use the knowledge that we have to advance our profession. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone, those physically here and online. I thank you and God bless you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ayebare. I think I can see there is a cake that you deserve.